Welcome to the Better Sex Podcast. My name is Deborah Catt, and I am your shameless host. This is the Better Sex Podcast, where we have unfiltered conversations about sex and relationship. These conversations are frank and sometimes explicit, and may not be appropriate for all audiences. So please listen with care. I truly believe that a sexy world creates a happier and a safer world. If you want to do your part in helping to create a safe and sexy world, please hit like, subscribe, and leave a comment wherever you get your podcast content. Today, we are going to dive into the world of my guest, Ayce Kypton. They have been in the coaching industry for 14 years. He's certified in the Erotic Blueprints, bondage, and a student of Sexological bodywork. Their passion has been centered around somatic embodiment and living an erotically liberated lifestyle as a trans masculine individual. I am so excited to be having this conversation. We are a new connection, colleagues from the bondage world and all things fun, sexy, and erotic. And so I'm looking forward to learning more about you. Welcome, Ayce.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I'm imagining there's quite a story behind your life. So how did you get here? What's your story?
Yeah. So my tagline, ironically, is from missionary to missionary and beyond in the bedroom. And so I started out as a conservative Republican Christian kid. I grew up in a really solid household, but it came from that slant. And so as I was growing up, I was showing signs of being trans. My mom and dad actually probably realized it when I was around 4. I enjoyed a lot of masculine activities. So sports, playing outside, making forts, riding my bike, jumping off ramps, like the fun things that boys do. All my friends as a kid were boys. And so I think they realized it. Obviously, I was throwing fights about having to wear dresses and, doing girly things as a young kid. It was a common occurrence that we'd have discussions and arguments about how I was going to present myself as I went out in the world. But back in the 90s, there wasn't really tools and resources for parents to come alongside their kids and help them. Also, because of my background, my parents weren't very open to it. So in my household, I was allowed to do those masculine types of things. My dad would take me hunting. We'd have a really great time. But when I went out into the world, I had to present feminine. And so I'd go to church on Sunday and I'd have to wear a dress. I'd have to do my hair. They wanted me to wear makeup, or not really necessarily at that young of an age, but as I got older, they wanted me to do more feminine things. And I had nothing to do with it. I really didn't desire that at all. But what ended up happening was I went through life on everybody else's terms. So I went to college. I became a missionary. I did the Christian thing. I lived a celibate lifestyle. And around the age of 38, my world started to fall apart. I looked really great on paper. I had a great job. I was super high up in the executive world. I had a lake house that I just built and designed on my own. I had all the fun toys, luxurious vacations. Like I looked like I had it all, but I was dying inside. And what ended up happening was I lost my job. I can't go into that because I signed an NDA agreement, but it was traumatic. It was a horrible experience. And in that, I started to critically think about my lifestyle and how I was living my life. And I realized that I was storing a lot of the pain and angst and anger, I guess, in my body. And so I had a lot of low back issues. I went paralyzed for 72 hours, which is a crazy story. I'll tell you that some other time. But basically, I lost everything. I lost my job, my community, my faith, my family. I lost it all. And I had to critically think about, how am I going to live this life in a way that doesn't abandon myself, but I actually can lean into my wants, needs, and desires. And so I watched a show called Sex, Love, and Goop on Netflix, and that totally changed my life. I went a complete 180. Super fun.
So I feel like there's a few things left out there. Um,
Yes.
so, I mean, first of all, let me ask you, what does transmasculine mean?
Yeah. So transmasculine means that I was born female at birth. That's what the doctors assigned me. But I don't identify as that. I identify as a man. I feel like a man inside. And so what I did was I transitioned from presenting masculine, or sorry, from presenting female to presenting masculine. And so I chose to medically transition. So if someone were to see me on the street today, they would think that I'm a man. They would have no idea, actually. I don't get questioned or misgendered anymore. But I went through the process of medically transitioning so I could present masculine and feel like my authentic self as I walk around the world.
And so, how long was the transitioning process?
Yeah. So I started this when I was 38. It took about a year for me to fully realize exactly who I was, like gender, orientation, expression, identity, all of that. I did a lot of deep dive work into myself and what I know to be true for me. And
Mhm.
then it took me about a year to medically transition. So I started T in January. I had top surgery in March, and then I had lower surgery, bottom surgery in November. So I did the entire process actually in a full year medically.
And just in terms of, so before 38, like, was that something, were you presenting masculine at all, or was it just
Yeah.
feminine, or were you starting to kind of look tomboy? Like,
Mhm.
it seems like that was an incredibly quick
Yeah.
change on the dime, and well,
Mm,
it is like that, but I am curious a little bit, if you don't mind talking a little bit more
yeah,
about your story.
absolutely. So my entire life, I've dressed more masculine. I never wanted to wear skirts, dresses, makeup, any of that. I was never interested in it. In 2015, I got promoted in my job. And so I went to one of the highest levels possible in my field. And in that promotion, I was coached in how to dress because I was consistently in boardrooms with multimillionaires. And so it was incredibly important that I looked the part. And so I pierced my ears for the first time, which was pretty ironic. And super funny, actually, now that I look back, because I had super short hair. I was wearing business suits all the time. I was dressing incredibly masculine. I was always pushing that bounds of like, how far can I go without someone asking me the question, am I a butch lesbian or am I trans masculine or what? Right. So I kind of played that line from 2015 to 2022. Um, where I dressed as masculine as I possibly could without getting questioned. And then when I lost my job, I was like, well, fuck societal norms. Like I'm going to be myself and I'm going to dress the way I want and do what I want to my body. I don't have to live by the standards of anybody else. I can choose what makes me happy.
Mhm.
And so that's when I started actually like really dressing how I wanted to. And, obviously doing the surgeries and things like that.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, just in terms of terminology and, so that people who are listening understand what we're talking about. So you said the question being, am I a butch lesbian or trans masculine? And
Yeah.
what's the difference?
Well, I think everybody has their own definition for this.
Hmm.
So for me, a butch lesbian would be someone that's probably attracted to women and has little to no desire to actually medically transition, but they like masculine things. So
Hmm.
they might have hobbies that are masculine. They might have a job that's masculine. They might dress masculine. They probably do. Um, and for someone who's trans masculine, I feel like that's my identity. Like that's who I am. I am a man. I don't want to be a female. And And also transmasculine, you can either choose to be transmasculine and have relationships with women, or you can be transmasculine gay, which is what I am, where I would want to have a relationship with a male. And so that's an interesting perspective too, right? Because lesbians usually are female to female. And for me, I have zero desire to have an intimate relationship with a female, especially sexually. I enjoy men and want to be with a man. So transmasculine gay is how I would identify.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm curious, like, what you've noticed in the world. Like, how does the world treat you? Because, I mean, I get to see you here, and you are very male. You were male presenting. You are. If I saw you on the street, I probably wouldn't have thought that you had a life before that wasn't male. So I'm kind of curious, like, in your experience, how is the world different for you? In this version of your identity versus your
Yeah.
past identity.
Yeah. So this is a really complex conversation, which I love. Let's dive in. So for me, I pass, and I always wanted to pass as a man. So that was my goal in the last year as medically transitioning. In the process of passing, I would get misgendered quite a bit because I kind of looked kind of female, kind of looked kind of masculine. Like I had a large chest. I could not hide that unless I had surgery. There was no way that anyone would see me and they'd be like, oh, that's a guy. No, they would be like, oh, that person has a chest. That person has large hips. Like I had very feminine characteristics. Now, if I choose to, I can go out and I can be stealth, which means no one knows that I was female at birth. And if I go into public now, and I'm not talking about sexuality, I'm not talking about my career, who I am, I probably won't even bring it up. People will just see me and they'll think that I'm a cis man or a gay man, depending on the context. Mm-hmm. I don't get questioned. But I mean, previously to when I had when I didn't have facial hair and those types of things, I did struggle quite a bit. And it's hard because you walk into a bathroom and if you don't have bottom surgery, you don't have the ability to stand up and use a urinal. You may or may not get questioned in a men's bathroom. And so there's a lot of like safety concerns and things like that. So as I was trying to get to that point of passing, there was a lot of awkwardness, a lot of fear. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people have a lot of ignorance around people who are trans and they don't really fully understand. They don't ask the right questions. There might be judgments there. And so I think if you're not passing as a trans individual, the world can be a really scary place because you never know who you're going to run into and what kind of story they're going to have in their head about who you are and how dangerous you might be. The reality is I'm just a human trying to live my life, right? And I exist. I'm here. I have to use the restroom sometimes. So like there's that awkwardness of like, I'm just a human. See me as that. I'm not a threat, right? And so I had a lot of that for that year that I was medically transitioning. Just going into public was really hard. I actually planned out if I was going to use the restroom, I'd probably use it at my house and then not use it for 4 to 8 hours, simply because I didn't want to run into those really awkward situations where someone might want to do harm to me, which that is a really prevalent threat in today's society.
Yeah, thank you for that. So I'm not sure if I want to go into speaking of harm. You know, you did just have a video go viral, and it wasn't quite the way you thought it was going to happen. So I'm wondering if we could talk about that.
Yeah, we can dive into that. Absolutely. So super funny now, a couple of weeks later. But I had created a video that kind of showed my transitioning process and what is it like to be trans. And I had added the hashtags FTM, transgender, things like that. Mm-hmm. And my hope and desire is that people who search those hashtags are looking for resources to know what it's like to transition and just to hear my story and maybe reach out and get some help if they're looking to transition. And so I do have a community of followers that are like that. The interesting thing is we live in a society now where the haters are searching those hashtags. And so what had happened was I had a transphobic community find my content and just go ballistic. And I'm far enough in my journey that what they said really wasn't that hurtful. I mean, it's more of a reflection of them than it is of me, right? And so there was a lot of hurtful comments. I think I had 120,000 engagements in less than 2 days. So I was spending my days blocking people, moderating conversation, all that kind of stuff. The good thing that came out of that was there's people in those communities that want to transition and they can't because it's not safe.
Mm-hmm.
And so as they were promoting my hate or my content out of hate, there were actually a few people that engaged in the content that they didn't have anywhere else to go. And so they found my content and they could find a safe space to be themselves. So good came out of that. They also another cool thing about it was like my Instagram profile and my Facebook profile just blew up. And so I was talking to my mentor today. I was like, there's a bit of like the celebrity status that's kind of happening right now. I ran into somebody just the other day in my community and they didn't know if they could have a conversation with me. And I'm like, I'm just a human. Like, and they're like, but you're this big deal on social media. I'm like, well, no, I'm a human. Like, let's have conversations. Like, you don't have to be afraid to engage with me. I'm not a celebrity. But viral posts like that make you look like it sometimes.
Got it. So, so I know that a lot of your content is about, about trans, trans information, trans, so that people understand your journey and perhaps their own journeys. And I also know, that that's only one part of who you are. So now we're going to talk about the Goop episode.
Oh, the juicy stuff. Yeah.
And which Goop episode might that be?
So Sex, Love, and Goop is on Netflix. It's totally free. And that is where my journey started. I watched it and I went, I need that in my life. Because what I saw was somatic embodiment happening in real life, like right in front of me. Basically, what you see on the show is people get on a massage table, they get really vulnerable, they land in their bodies, and then they experience pleasure in a whole new way. And so that was my entry point into this work, was actually going, wow, that exists. I want that. And so I actually reached out to Jaya and Darshana, who are both on the show, and they both actually mentored me for a while, which is crazy to think about now that I look back on it. Like I had two pretty big deals in the industry. So yeah, we're gonna help you through this journey. And that's been a huge part of my story, is that somatic embodiment and having those types of mentors come into my life and really share their expertise so that I can help a community that tends to disassociate from their bodies. Trans individuals, and I think all individuals to some extent, have had some sort of pain, injury, trauma in their life, and we learn how to disassociate real quickly. We learn how to abandon ourselves and our desires in order to make somebody else more comfortable or to help ease the situation in some sort of way. And so my hope and desire is to help individuals really get their wants, needs, and desires met. And what does that look like? And so I love creating that space for people that is safe for all of them to exist. The parts that you don't want to talk about, let's dive into that and let's create a space for you to feel like this is a really safe space for you to be vulnerable and get those needs met.
Beautiful. Thank you. So just for anyone who's listening and doesn't know, Jaya is the creator of the Erotic Blueprints, among other things. And Darshana is a sexological bodyworker.
Correct. Yeah.
I'm gonna invite you to talk more about your experience with sexological bodywork and your experience with the Erotic Blueprints.
Yeah. Yeah. So sexological bodywork for me is where my awakening happened. I was incredibly numb and hurt. And I was unable to be in my body and feel any type of pleasure. I think a lot of times when you ask somebody to do a body scan on their body, the first thing that comes to mind is, where's the pain? Oh, my low back hurts, or my knee hurts, or those are the first things that we notice. And in sexological bodywork and in the erotic blueprints, the desire is to find, where's the pleasure? How can we find even the smallest of bit amount of pleasure in our bodies and amplify that? So right now you might do a body scan. You might be like, oh wow, I can find a little bit of pleasure in my left toe, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the goal through somatic body work would be to, okay, how do we increase that? What does that look like? Maybe there's a breathing exercise we do. Maybe there's some sensation play we do. But how do we awaken that desire so that that becomes something that's more prevalent in your world instead of the pain? Which was an incredible awakening for myself. And that's why I like to do this with other people as well, because to live your life out of pain is tiring, it's exhausting. But if you can find that pleasure in your body, there's an unlimited amount of pleasure that can be found. And so every day it can be even a deeper, juicier like experience, right?
Mm-hmm. Love hearing that. And
Yes.
um and the erotic blueprints.
Yeah. So the erotic blueprints basically is a framework for life. There's 5 different blueprints. You have the energetic, which kind of, oh, that's you? You're an energetic?
Well, I'm
Awesome.
energetic. I'm an energetic shapeshifter.
Ooh, that's a fun place to play in. I like that a lot. I'm an energetic kinky.
Ooh.
I like to get a little mischievous, a little taboo. Yeah, so the energetic is someone that enjoys like spiritual depth, and they bring that into sex. And so, like, a superpower for them is you might be able to have like a touch-free orgasm, which is super cool. Juicy.
Well, I guess I can. Thank you for noticing.
What a great experience. I remember the first time I had one of those, I was like 15. I was like, what just happened? I totally had no idea. So, yeah, that's cool. The second one is sensual. So, you love engaging in all of the senses. You might get distracted by a messy room or a smell or something like that. The senses are really important to you. And then you have the sexual, who tends to go from 0 to 60 real quick. Like, you love to have fun, there's passion, there's play, and you're easily aroused. That's a huge piece of the sexual journey. And then there's kinky, which you enjoy psychological or sensational base play, I guess. And you really enjoy the taboo. So whatever's taboo for you, that's kind of the play zone that you like to be in. And then there's the shapeshifter, which is kind of a combination of all of them, where you like variety, you like creativity, and you just want it all. And so once you learn your blueprint and kind of maybe your partner's blueprint, or how to find the blueprint in other people, you learn how to interact with them in such a way that is just like orgasmic. And it's super, super juicy and fun to play in.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm not certified in it, but something I know enough about to be dangerous. And
Yeah.
what I've noticed is like, when I bring that idea into a couple, right?
Mm.
And we start looking at like, because I've noticed at about 3 years, most couples, if they're not playing in their blueprint, then that's when you start hearing things like, oh, I've got low desire. Oh, I love my partner, but we're not sexual. And really kind of refocusing them and helping them to find like, who they are as individuals, and then bring them together as a couple so that they can find the play between them,
Yeah.
speak each other's languages. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah,
and
the lust only lasts for so long in a relationship, and then after that, what do you have left? You know, you have to find those areas where you really turn each other on, and what does that look like to play in those spaces?
Absolutely. And what does sex look like to you as a couple? Because I think we're
Mm.
so stuck in this idea that it's like sex is two people coming together. There's escalation, there's penetration, there's climax. If you're doing it right, both people are climaxing at the same time, and then there's napping. I don't find that to be accurate.
Ah,
If you've got somebody who's kinky, you don't always have to touch them. You could just, sex their brain up and,
mhm,
satisfaction and pleasure happens. If somebody, so it's just, it's learning how to bridge each other's um, ways of being and to do it
mhm.
without shame.
Absolutely.
I think that's a big thing. So when you like, who do you generally work with?
Yeah, so I work with anybody. When I first started this journey, I was working with a lot of cis het couples or individuals, just trying to figure out, what was not working in their world and helping them out. Most recently, it's been a lot of LGBTQ people, specifically trans individuals, maybe gay men. Those would probably be my ideal clients, but really, in all honesty, I will work with anybody that has like a shared commonality with me. Somebody that I vibe with, we have the good chemistry together. I would love to work with people that want to do this work, right? They want to show up and they actually want to fix something or move forward in their journey. Those are the type of people that I really get excited to work with.
And so, how would somebody know that they're a good, like that erotic blueprints or sexological bodywork or
Mhm.
bondage, which we haven't really talked much about,
Yeah.
might be something to explore. Like,
Mm.
how would you say somebody's is like this might be a good thing for them? Like, what are some of the
Yeah.
things you're noticing or thinking about?
Yeah. Is there a curiosity there for you?
Hmm.
Do you have a desire, a want, a need that isn't being expressed? And do
Hmm.
you want to figure out what that looks like? If you do, I'm a great coach to work with. I love it when people come to me and they've critically thought about the situation that they're in and they're wanting to find that solution. Um, I will help you process it. I'm not going to solve all your problems, but I'm going to resource you so that we can work together to solve your problems. So if that's something that gets you excited as a client, I'm probably your person. Um, I'm also pretty lighthearted and flexible. Like I really enjoy life. And so if you come from life from that perspective or want to have more joy and pleasure and happiness in your life, I'm probably the right connection for you. I don't like to be too serious. I like to enjoy, laugh, have fun. Obviously talk about the deep and serious things. I can't do surface level conversations very, very well. It's not my go-to. I like to get deep and vulnerable. But I like to do that in such a way that's engaging and fun.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And so, just for folks who are listening who may not be aware, um, what does cis mean?
Mm. Yeah. So you align yourself with the sex that you were born with. So if you were born a male, the doctor said you were a male, you align with that, in your body and also mentally. And then the same for female.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. And do you? I'm just kind of curious, like what might somebody who is like what are some of the problems or some of the things that people are
Mm.
thinking about
Mhm.
that like the erotic blueprints or is it like I have low desire? Is it that, what are some of the problems that people come to you?
Yeah. Yeah. So there's four obstacles really that we deal with most of our clients. They're physical, emotional, chemistry, and electrical. I'll go through those a little bit, but basically, the clients that we tend to see, they have one of those issues or maybe multiple of those issues going on. So the physical looks like you might have an issue physically in your body. Like there might be a pain point. So we find out what's happening. Maybe we talk to doctors, those types of things to figure out what we can solve when it comes to that issue. Or if it's an emotional issue, what's going on emotionally between you and your partner? Like, what's your story around sex? Did you have good sex education? Those types of things. We look at the emotional component of that. The chemistry is we check your hormones. We see what's normal for your age, what's optimal for your age, what feels best for you and your body. So you might go to a doctor, you might have your hormone panels checked, and then we look at that and we say, okay, these are some of the issues. How can we solve that? And the electrical is more on like a cellular level, what's happening in the bioelectrical field. And so those are 4 areas that people have obstacles in that we help them strategically in. And I am resourced to kind of dive into and ask the questions and then also help you find the solutions to whatever those issues might be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, so it's interesting. So, and once they've kind of looked at these different things, what are some of the ways that working with you what is some of the ways that working with you might look like?
Yeah, yeah. So it's incredibly different for everybody. I'm just thinking of some of my most recent clients, and it's like they run the whole spectrum of, gender, identity, orientation, expression. There's some sort of obstacle there that they're trying to work through. And so for them to work with me, really, it just looks like coming onto a Zoom appointment and sharing what's going on, your past, present, and future, and then me helping you move forward in that. And every client is incredibly different. So like for me to give you examples, I could give you some, but it's very it's so wide. I guess the net is so wide of the issues that you could bring to the table and then the resourcing that I could have to help you move forward in whatever direction you want to go.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'm just sort of thinking about some of the places where sexuality, affects our bigger life. Clearly, if we're not, you know, clearly if we're partnered and the sexuality isn't working there, that can have a lot of different detrimental effects. Not just on the connection to partnership, but whatever the family piece is there, but also as you pointed out. It can be really challenging at work. It can be really challenging out in the world. And I think it's sort of, we don't always think of sexuality as having the effect. I think a lot of times we only think about sexuality as being something that happens in the bedroom. But that's not really accurate, is it?
No. So my mentor actually said this. She goes, one of the biggest mistakes we make is taking the spirituality out of the bedroom. We take God out of sex. We're all here because of sex. It's designed to be this way. And it changes the way that we show up in the world. Right. And so I just had this experience this morning. I woke up and I was in a fantastic mood. The reason I was in a fantastic mood is because I'm getting my sexual needs met. I know what they are and I'm getting them met, and all of me can exist. Right. And I think this is to talk even on a bigger spectrum, this is probably the issue that we're seeing even in the political realm right now. If we want to go that direction, we have political leaders that are super frustrated. They probably are pent up sexually, and it's coming out sideways, right? In the world.
Yeah, I mean, clearly there's some, sexual shadow work going on there. Just in terms of, okay, one little political jag, and that's it, I promise. But
okay.
Recently they started talking about, I can't remember what state it is, but they're going to put the 10 Commandments up. Right?
Yeah,
Which
that,
I think will be really entertaining when somebody raises their hand and it's like, excuse me, what does it mean to covet someone's ass? I mean, I don't know about you, but I covet a lot of ass when we go walking down the street. Like, damn, that is some fun. Anyway. But, it's just such an interesting thing of when we start legislating around people's, bodies, around their, what they can and can't do in the bedroom, who they can and can't love, who they can and can't marry. Like it's just a recipe for disaster. Um, so yeah.
It's all a grasp for power and control, though, in all honesty. I mean, if we're all sexually liberated and enjoying our lives, like the whole world would change because sex is a tool to awaken our own desires and who we truly are. Right. And it can be used in such a powerful way once we're erotically liberated. But if they can keep us from getting to that place, they have control over us to an extent.
Right. And the more that, we bring in this idea of like, oh, the body is shameful. Oh, because of course that then translates to we are shameful. And I think shame is one of the most detrimental, and it's detrimental to the self, and it is a huge tool to control others. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's why the erotic blueprints was so good for me because I was able to experience like true intimacy with myself. Like, how can I find unconditional love for me?
Mm-hmm.
For me, not from anybody else, but from myself to me. How can I unconditionally love myself? And what does that look like? Like, the erotic blueprints gave me the ability to critically think about who am I and what does it look like for me to love myself and then show up in the world as someone who can love others because I'm loving myself first. Like, that mentality right there is what really shifted me into where I'm at today.
I love hearing that.
So good.
It's so good. And I just want to step back a second because, you did say that your blueprint is kinky, and that is all about the taboo. And there is so much power. There's so much power in taboo. There's so much power because that's the stuff that's in the shadow, right? And whether it is, around our emotional taboos, the things that we can and can't feel, whether it's around the things that we can and can't do, but like once we can actually harness that power and not just bring it out of the shadows, but actually embrace it. It's such a powerful experience. And I know for myself, when I found bondage before I found the erotic blueprints, but for those who are listening and are not sure what bondage is, it's amazing. It's a process that combines bondage and massage and sensory deprivation, which means wearing blindfolds and upping some senses and downing some other ones. But what's beautiful about it is it's such a great experience in being able to play with those shadow pieces, play with those taboo pieces, and then allow you to own them, right? Allow you to actually work through the shame and find the power at the other side. So yeah, I get kind of excited about this one.
Well, I get really excited. I get really excited about it too. I mean, so as a Christian, as a woman presenting like that as most of my life, I had this dark side in me, like this dark energetic that really wanted to come out and play, but there was no safe space for that to happen in that world, right? And so when I mixed the energetic and the kinky and I started doing bondage and started doing a little bit of dom work, it was like, ooh, all of me can exist, even like this dark, fearful, like, that's kind of fun. And as I started playing in that, it was like, wow, I really suppressed that. My entire life, I suppressed all of these desires, emotions, feelings that are just a natural part of the human experience. We're meant to. We're meant to feel those. We're meant to express them. But because of society and religion, a lot of times we hide those things and then things just go sideways. And so for me, bondage was one of those places where I could dive into the kink, into the taboo in such a safe space where I could be held by someone who was professionally trained in this and kind of get curious with those desires and play a little bit and just have a little bit of fun and laughter and darkness and whatever showed up was totally okay and celebrated in that space, which was huge in my like transformation and healing journey too.
Yeah, and I just want to give a concrete sort of, this might sound a little esoteric to people, but I just want to give an example. And that is that I was working with a client who had a really interesting relationship to jealousy, in that their relationship to jealousy was, if their partner felt jealousy, then they felt desired, and that meant that they were lovable, right?
Mm.
And it brought up a lot of issues in their relational dynamic because they were always looking to make their partner jealous so they could feel that.
Yeah.
So we kind of created a space for that jealousy to, come into the light, and for them to sort of play things out around jealousy so that, her partner could feel the feelings, or so that she could feel the feelings that went with that, and her partner could do it in a way that wasn't damaging to the relationship. And so, as they played with that, they both got a lot of turn on out of it. They both got a lot of pleasure out of it. And it became something that could have been, a relationship killer. It could have also been a really dangerous thing because she was constantly doing things, to poke the bear, if you will. And so being able to have that space to work these things out, to play with them, to bring that shadow piece to the light is so important. And I think, bondage, the erotic blueprints, but playing in the kinky world can be so liberating, and there's so much pleasure to be harvested there. And I just want to, add one more thing here, and I'll let you take this one away, but it's like one of the tenets of the erotic blueprints is pleasure first.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So if you don't know what pleasure first is, it's basically an exercise in finding pleasure in your body and speaking to those desires that you have. And so I started this probably 3 years ago when I started working with Jaya, of starting my mornings by waking up and asking my body, what do you want right now in this moment? And it can be super juicy, and it can also be super just comforting and good for your body. So like, for instance, you could just pick up a piece of chocolate from your nightstand and indulge in chocolate for the very first thing in the morning. That could be really great. Your body might really want that. You could do self-pleasure. You could do something with your partner. You could go work out at the gym. Like, it's asking your body what it truly wants and then giving that to yourself. It's so liberating, and it starts your day in such a way that you show up differently to the world, because you're in your body, you're grounded, and you're just coming from a place of being centered and being present, which most people don't do when they start their day and they look at their phone and they go to social media, or they jump into their first meeting or whatever it might be. It's a really nice way just to slow down and be present.
Ah, so good.
Yes.
In a moment, I'm going to ask you, if there's one thing you wanted people to get out of our conversation, what might that be? But first, I want to give people an opportunity to know how they can support the Better Sex podcast. And, sex is a really complicated subject, and it makes or breaks a relationship. And unfortunately, most of us don't grow up in an environment where talking about sex is welcome. That's why I'm offering the Sexual Mastery Breakthrough Session. This is a personalized one-on-one experience so that you can bring your questions and have them answered in a non-judgmental, compassionate way. So let's face it, a podcast is not enough. You need more than that. You need practices and tools and someone that can give you accurate reflection. So if you're ready for these things, please check out the show notes and book yourself a sexual mastery breakthrough session, because life is too short for bad sex. All right. So I am so curious if someone listening were to get one thing out of our conversation, what would you want them to walk away with?
Yeah. Fuck societal norms. Stop abandoning yourself and truly be honest with who you are and what you want. My life totally changed when I said, I don't care what society or what religion says. It's all a bunch of made up rules, and we don't have to follow them. What's right for you?
Mm.
And what does it look like to live a life out of that space?
So good. I love
Mm.
that. Thank you so much. So, my guest here is Ayce, and I know that you are on the socials and Facebook. Would you like to give us your socials?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I'm on Facebook and I'm on Instagram, Ayce Kypton. So just spell out my name and you'll find me there. And then I have a website, acekypton.com, where you can find all my offerings. I am offering $50 off for anybody who comes to me from this podcast. So just find my contact form on my website and shoot out that you heard me on the podcast, and I'll give you a discount.
Beautiful. Thank you. That's very generous. So yeah, any last words?
Live your life in pleasure.
I love that. Live your life in pleasure. Thank you so much, Ayce. Please follow them on social media. And if you know someone who needs to hear what Ayce has said here, who needs to hear what we've shared around pleasure, around being oneself, around transitioning, any of the many things that we talked about here today, please send them this episode and share it far and wide. And thank you so much for listening. Again, Ayce, thank you so much. And please like, subscribe, comment wherever you get your podcasts. Bye for now.
Adios.